Guys, welcome back to another episode of TalkFlow. This is episode 21. And as you can see from the title, today we're going to be talking about how to price your Webflow projects. So, yeah, let's just get straight into it. Marlon, you have anything to say or?
No, not really. I think we can get started on this one. We're trying to keep the duration a bit short for
Yeah.
this episode.
Yeah, so as usual, we're going to start off with a disclaimer. And the first thing is, guys, I do apologize if I look or sound a bit dull. It's, it's because I'm fasting, it's a month of Ramadan. And yeah, just lack of energy and stuff like that. But, we move. And just as the disclaimer for this video's topic is pricing, it varies between person to person, varies between location. And we get that question a lot, like, I remember we had a comment a couple of episodes ago where somebody said, oh, one of our beginning episodes, somebody said, how do you price projects when you're in India, or how do you get projects, if you're based in India and stuff like that? And we do
Yeah,
understand that location does play a huge role in how much you can charge. But the rules that we're going to be telling you guys today apply to wherever you are, no matter if you're in
yeah,
India, England, Australia, wherever.
yeah,
And yeah, again, everyone has to start from somewhere, and your prices are gonna slowly increase over time. It's not gonna, jump from one, every single day is not gonna increase.
yeah.
With
It
experience and time, it's gonna slowly
yeah.
increase.
It's like basic economics where when there's more
Mhm.
demand, your price will go up. When there's no demand, your prices will go down. Like
Yeah, and your demand is dictated by the level of work, the quality of work, your
yeah.
experience. So yeah.
But these are just rules to sort of help you guide to see how much you should be charging at wherever position that you are right now.
Yeah, and I think that's like a big thing. People do not know what to charge, especially as a beginner. So that's what we're going to be breaking down today.
Yeah,
And I think like the main question people get asked is, should you charge hourly? Should you charge on a day rate, or should you charge a fixed one-time price?
yeah.
And I think this question, like,
Let's start with
oh,
hourly.
yeah, hourly. Hourly is good. I've worked on a couple of hourly based projects, but I think you should only work on an hourly based project if it's like minor tweaks. Like you should never. I personally don't think you should ever work on an hourly rate if you're building a project from scratch. If
Yeah,
you have to jump in a project and do minor tweaks or add on certain sections, then that's fine, because it will make sense to do it on an hourly rate.
yeah,
But I think personally that's the only reason I can see that you would choose to do an hourly rate. And I think
yeah.
the same can go with day rate a little bit. Um, Most of the time, agencies as well. If you do some work for agencies, most of the time they pay you daily. They don't um
Yeah.
pay you on a fixed project basis. But yeah,
Yeah. So for me, I think hourly and daily are very similar in just one difference is the hourly is a little bit more difficult to sort of track your time and you got to be very rigorous about it. Um, Whereas in the day rate, it's very simple. Whether you spend 1 hour a day or 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day, you're charging the same amount. So that gives you a leeway of like, if something is, a lot more complex than you initially thought, you're not pressured by I need to finish it within this hour because they can't afford for more than that. And as you said, it's okay. These two rates are okay if you're freelancing for a small company or you're freelancing for an agency and they're asking you to help on small sections here and there. But if you're actually building a proper site like from scratch or really complex projects, fixed price is always the way to go. And another main disadvantage with hourly and day rate is that it's very difficult to sort of get your 50% deposit upfront because you do not know how long it's going to take, and your client is not going to pay you, I don't know, half a month's worth of money on a day or something like that. It's very difficult to sort of convince them to get you a payment upfront, which puts you at a risk of, if you don't want to work on the project or if the client's being annoying or you just can't finish the project, most of the time you end up losing the money. And it's something that you got to live and learn. But if you can try to always fix price things is what I normally would say, no matter how complex it is. Even if you overshoot the scope, meaning that the scope of the project is larger than you expected it to be, you can always just tell, hey, look, I thought it's going to be this much, but there's a lot more work, we need more budget. And if they don't want to pay, at least they, you got your 50%, as well as, as long as you can wrap up whatever's in scope, you pretty much, it's always a safer bet than the other two.
yeah. So I think the next topic is now that you guys understand hourly rate, day rate, and fixed rate, and when to use those, when you're a beginner, it's quite hard to evaluate your skills and then obviously figure out a way to price yourself, because you don't have an experience in pricing, you don't know what to charge. So
Yeah.
in terms of beginner pricing, obviously you should use this kind of pricing when you're a complete beginner, whether that's your first project or second, third, whatever, right? And I think in terms of how to price as a beginner, what I would say personally is just go for whatever you can, the highest you can.
Yeah.
Don't have like a minimum, like, oh, I'm not going to charge anything below 1,000, because you're setting very unrealistic expectations for yourself. And
Yeah.
especially as a beginner, is quite hard to charge anything like about 1,500, 2,000 pound.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Just
A
whatever like
simpler.
project makes sense to like upgrade your
Yeah.
skills and is a good portfolio piece. Make sure that you get whatever you can for it, whether that's 500. I think 500 is a good baseline,
But yeah,
but yeah.
I mean, it always depends on the project, but what I normally would say is if you're a beginner, just charge whatever your client's willing to pay. Like even if they're willing to pay $100, $200, if it's a first project, you're not doing it for the money.
It's for
Even
experience, yeah.
yeah, it's for experience to build your portfolio. So if you're a beginner, you should really not worry about pricing too much, as long as you get paid and you keep increasing your price as you go. Don't get stuck at the
Mhm.
200 or $500 range forever. An experiment, right? Like I think when I was a beginner, uh when I had this thing of like, okay, my day rate, it's £100 or something like that, and that felt like a lot of money. But then when I apply for, on LinkedIn or whatever, they're always looking for freelancers, and most of the time they do state the day rate that are willing to pay, and you just quote them that day rate. And most of the time, if you have a good portfolio and they want to work with you, they pay you what you ask. So it's always worth sort of experimenting a little bit, trying to push it, even if it's $10 more or $50 more every project. It's gonna compound, and as you grow, you're gonna be more comfortable asking for more for your work.
Yeah. So once got a couple of projects under your belt, you build your experience, once you've leveled up your skills to the point where you can say you're an intermediate developer, you have to be charging intermediate prices. And what does that mean? Well, I think once you reach an intermediate level in your skills, then I would say for sure you have to have like a minimum engagement rate.
Yeah.
And what I like to say is like 1,500 to 1,000, minimum for like a one pager.
1,500 to 1,000. You mean 1,000 to 1,500?
Oh, same thing, bro. But yeah, that's what I would say. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to add on to that, Vim?
I think for intermediate, yeah, a baseline is always important. But as another thing is that as you're, progressing in your business or whatever, you would sort of have sort of processes, and steps that you need to do to finish a project. And because you have more experience and more knowledge on all the steps that you need to do to finish a project, you can pretty much put a price tag to every single thing that you do. And this is what we'll talk about a bit later. But I think that's where we are at right now in this intermediate pricing range, where we're pretty much not just charging for the time, but also the expertise that we're bringing on. And as you mentioned, with I completely got rid of an hourly rate or day rate, because it just doesn't make sense, and a lot of issues sort of rise with that. Intermediate pricing is always fixed cost, and you get a 50% deposit upfront. But as you work on bigger projects, you do tend to most of the time undershoot the budget, meaning you always think, oh, I can do it for this amount of money, but then there's some technical difficulties that sort of come in. Your client's scope starts to creep up, or they have a little bit, your timeline gets longer, right? It's just natural, and it's part of every single project, not just web projects, construction. Most of the time your budget always overshoots, and if it does, and if you feel like you're not being paid enough, I always say just tell your clients, just be like, hey, look, we thought it's going to take 4 weeks to do it, but we are almost reaching 7 weeks. It's almost twice the period, and we need to, have a more budget to cover our expenses, to pay my employee or pay myself for all of this. Most of the time, if your client you're working with sees the value, they are willing to pay that extra over budget. But it doesn't mean when you fix your price, doesn't mean you cannot raise it, and it doesn't mean you cannot lower it, right? It's very rare you lower your price once you agree with the client. But for example, if you say a project's going to take 5K to build, and you realize, oh, you're pretty much done with it very quickly, you can say, hey, no, 4K is enough. Most of the time you don't, because who's going to say no to money? But sometimes you
Yeah.
can, and that sort of builds a bit of trust as well, because you're not, overcharging for the sake of overcharging someone.
Yeah. I think I like the point you mentioned about um knowing your baseline and calculating each step, because once you get an intermediate level, you build process and stuff, and then you know what to do each project. And
Yeah,
again, like you said, you can put a price tag to that.
yeah,
And once you combine all of those prices, that should be your baseline. Whether it's like 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, that should be your baseline. So
yeah,
that every project you at least break even. And of course, I don't recommend breaking even. You should always have profit.
yeah.
Um,
And I think
yeah.
that's why when you're intermediate, you start tracking more of your income, you start tracking more of your expenses, and you know how much, if you're going the agency route, you know how much a freelancer is going to cost. You got you know a lot of the cost that takes to run a business,
Hmm.
and then you can set your minimum price to beat that. Like, at
Hmm.
least, at worst case scenario, you get one project, you're at least breaking even, right? That's the lowest barrier you should set. and
Yeah.
and and I think in the intermediate phase is when you have a lot more knowledge and expertise to sort of know all these things.
Yeah. And once you've obviously had a couple of projects, let's say between like 10 projects in while you're an intermediate developer, then you
Yeah.
should move on to an expert pricing. And this is a bit different where I mean I'm not on that level yet, so
Same.
maybe Vim can
I'm not
but
there
well
yet, but
yeah, but from my experience, like speaking to other experts and stuff like that,
yeah,
what I would say is like it's just about you're an expert when your demand is a lot more than what you can handle.
yeah,
Where you already have 5 projects and you're getting like 20 project requests,
yeah,
and that is when you know that you you should only. I think when you become an expert, you don't bump up your prices because, for example, you're giving more value. You
yeah.
bump up your prices because, firstly, you
There's not enough
because you
supply.
can, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
there's too much demand. So,
yeah,
but you increase your prices to kind of lower that demand so you can, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, and
It's
there's
like
also like your
filtering out.
experience as well. You're charging for your experience, and
Yeah,
I think that is what distinguished. I don't know how you say that.
distinguish.
Distinguish. That's how you
Yeah,
distinguish between an intermediate and an expert.
yeah.
So,
And I think that's one way, one sort of expert that we see. Another expert that we always see is something like Chris Do, where he always says,
hmm,
"Oh, you have to price the value that you're bringing." And
hmm,
for me, for the longest time, I never understood what that meant. But being in the intermediate phase, you have seen both the beginner and you also see what it takes to be an expert. I sort of understand what he's trying to say is that especially when you start going for bigger clients, like, they have proper money, they have proper employees, they are large enterprise level clients. They're not paying you for your time, but they're paying you for the expertise. That's it.
hmm,
And if you can solve their problem in the least amount of time, they are willing to pay you the most. It's literally
hmm,
the opposite of what a beginner client would come to you for. They want
hmm,
the most amount of work as fast as possible, but as cheap as possible, right?
hmm,
Whereas an enterprise client, they have the money, they have the time, they just need somebody to trustworthy and also have the reputation to solve their problem. And this is, I think that's why experts can charge. We see, a lot of Webflow agencies charge way like 20K, like their base level is
hmm,
like 10K. That
hmm,
almost sounds very ridiculous to us because we haven't reached there yet. But from if we do it, looking down at it, we can see, that makes sense, because anything less than that is just not profitable, right? They
hmm,
have a benchmark, they charge 20K, 50K, 100K for a website. It's because the amount of work it takes, as well as I think Chris Do or somebody mentions, you're not paying me to solve this problem in 10 minutes, you're paying me for the 10 years it took me to solve it in 10 minutes,
hmm,
like something like that. And
hmm.
that's the same principle. I think that's why they're charging 20K, 30K, 50K on projects. It's sort of like you're cashing in your experience that you've built by being underpaid, relatively speaking. And when you become an expert, you pretty much cash everything in, and you get, it's just about waiting out and seeing. I hope
Yeah.
that made sense.
That made a lot of sense. It's better than how I explained it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think expert pricing, yeah, man,
it's,
what you
it's
said,
tricky
bro.
because we are not there yet,
Yeah.
but but we sort
Mm.
of understand because
Yeah, we
going
understand.
from a beginner to intermediate is the same process as going from intermediate to expert.
Yeah.
When we look at it now, I clearly remember there was a time where people charge 2K for a website. Jesus, I can do it for
Mm.
500. Right? That was like my mentality. It's the same
Mm.
mentality now when you look at someone charge 10K or 50K for a website, like, damn, I can do it for half the price.
Mm.
But as you grow, it's just natural. You don't even think about
Mm.
it.
Yeah. And I think your value in yourself increases. Like
Yeah.
your perceived value of yourself increases as you become an expert. Because I like the Crystal quote you mentioned. Like, you're not paying me for the 10 minutes. You're paying me for the 10 years it took to
Yeah.
learn how to do that 10 minutes. I think.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. Your perceived value in yourself increases. Like whatever you learn, it took 10 years for you to become an expert. So you base your pricing on those 10 years. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So yeah, man. Let's move
I
on.
think now,
Mm,
like, I think a lead to the next topic is okay,
yeah.
now we know how you should charge, but what
Hmm.
should you charge for? Like, I think that was the biggest question is like,
Yeah.
we say web design, Webflow, that's it, like two components. That's
Hmm.
that's all I can charge. What else can I charge for? I think this is the main crux of this
Yeah.
topic.
I think before, I remember it's like when how I used to look at pricing when I was a beginner or when I was in the early stages of my intermediate stage. I was like, what do I charge? And I think when I watch videos and research, most of the people just say pages, like just charge per page.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking in my head, how about if like, because each project, you can have one website where like the page is very simple,
Yeah.
grid layouts, image left, content right.
Yeah.
But then some pages have like crazy scroll interactions. So should I,
Yeah.
price them
Should
both
they,
the same?
yeah. Yeah.
And it's a bit different. So what I would say is that there's a couple of things that you should base your pricing on. Of course, pages is one of them, and I'm just gonna list out what all of the components you should charge for. So firstly
Yeah.
is the complexity of the design. Is it simple? Is it like average, or is it like super complex? And then obviously number two is the number of unique page layouts.
Yeah,
So
that's the key one. Yeah.
yeah, that's the key one, right? So the number of pages
Whenever
that
whenever
are
we
not
say,
CMS based. Yeah.
yeah, and this is a question a lot of clients do get because I used to have a pricing guide which I removed from the website. The main
Mm-hmm.
question is like, oh, you're charging this much for 6 pages, but what if we have 7 pages? Are you gonna charge us the highest amount?
Mm,
And I'm always like,
yeah.
"Oh, it means like 6 unique pages, but we don't communicate it." But I think that's a good
Mm-hmm.
way. Whenever you say, "Oh, we charge per page," it usually means unique layout. If it's the
Yeah.
same
So
layout,
for
we're not gonna
example,
count it. Yeah.
yeah, and I think for example, let's say there's a project that just has a home page and a terms and condition page and a privacy page, right?
Yeah.
The home page is very complex, has a lot of crazy interactions, but then the terms and condition page and the privacy policy page
Yeah.
is very, very simple.
Yeah.
So how you would price that is you would price the home page as it has a complex layout and there's just one unique layout. But for the terms and
Yeah.
conditions and privacy policy page, they're both basically the same. So you can count them as template pages. So you
Yeah.
can both count them. You can both charge. You can charge the client one page for both of those,
Yeah.
and it will also be a simple layout. So it will be a lot less than the homepage cost.
Yeah.
So
So I
yeah,
think
that
that's
that's
how you
that's what I
should
would
break
say. Yeah.
down. Yeah. Another example would be if a client has 10 pages, right?
Hmm.
And there's, five CMS: blog, news, press, reviews, whatever. The unique layout would be probably homepage, maybe an about page, a blog template. That's it. Like four unique
Yeah.
pages, and the rest are just pretty much CMS pages or template pages. For that, again,
Yeah.
as you said, for you see how complex is each page, right? Maybe the homepage is very complex, but then about and everything else is just left, right, center content,
Mm,
very basic thing that you can put together in 10 minutes. You can call that as beginner pages, and you can mix both of that and then have a a calculated amount at the end to charge the client.
yeah. So I think in terms of of him, you mentioned one as well, another component. So I just said complexity, the number of unique page layouts, and the number of template-based layouts, or like CMS pages. And then I think another component should be the complexity of the interactions as well. If it's static, and the complexity of interaction could be static, average complexity where it's like, scrolling
Yeah.
text animations, or
Yeah.
like very complex with like parallax animations and all of that stuff. And then there should also be, I think, another good component is CMS as well. If the website includes a CMS, how many CMSs, and the complexity of it as well. If it has like 100, CMS
Yeah.
fields or just a couple, I think that plays a huge role in Webflow pricing as well. And I
Yeah.
think lastly is also integrations. So whether the website has any integrations, whether that's on Airtable,
Yeah.
Canonly, Hotjar, all of that stuff. So yeah, I think those are like the main components that you can charge for Webflow development.
Yeah. And these are like
Cool.
line items, right? Which is I've started to do a
Mm,
lot more right now. When you just tell a client this is the price, most of the time it's like, why are you charging so much for just a website? But when you sort
mm-hmm,
of break it down in like, okay, we need to design it, we need to develop it, we need to test it, we need to QA it, which is feedback, and then maybe they have a lot of blog posts that you need to migrate. We can call SEO and migration as a line item. And once you start breaking this down, you can add a price tag to each individual component.
mm-hmm,
And if all of that are essential, right? If a client tells you, I need my SEO, I need my blogs imported, all the things that they say, and they actually see a price tag to it, they can then justify, okay, add all this number up, it's going to give me this. Fair enough. That makes a lot more sense. And the
mm-hmm,
thing is, if you do it properly, they cannot cross out anything, right?
mm,
Sometimes I allow them to cross out design, so they go and find someone to design it for us, and then they bring the design and we just develop it. They can
mm,
choose which one they want. Okay, maybe they don't want to do the blog migration yet. They can just cross that off and reduce a little bit of the budget. Allows them
mm-hmm,
to sort of customize the plan rather than just being like, oh, it's going to take $7,000 to do this, and they have no idea why. What you're going to be
mm,
working on? Where is the money going? Are you just going to pocket all of the money? So when you sort of break it down in that sense, it just makes more sense to you how much you
yeah,
should be charging. And most of the time, you realize, oh man, I'm not charging enough, because you just look at the amount of work that you need to do,
mm.
and then you see the end price tag. You're like, okay, that's
Yeah,
that's not
and
enough.
I think I was watching like a video from 54 Digital, John D. Saunders, and
Mm,
he also mentioned that you should have like every single thing that you do as an item list on your invoice or
yeah,
proposal, whatever.
yeah,
And again, like you said, it not only
and
shows you what you're doing, it
yeah,
also like, for example, if like that client that you're sending the proposal to, if they have another developer and in their proposal they just write workflow development,
yeah,
the client can't see what they're doing. But if watch this video, and then you write down each of your proposal
line item,
items or
yeah,
whatever, your line items, you can say, okay, workflow development, interactions, Google Analytics, all of that stuff, so the client can see, and it kind of increases the value. Although the other developer may be doing the exact same stuff, just
yeah,
because you have it written down and you price them, the client knows that you're going to be doing a lot more, and that
yeah.
will help you win that client.
Yeah, and another option could be sort of bundling things together. So if it's
Mm,
Webflow development, you can bundle, you know, again, it depends on which approach you do, packaged approach or individual customizable approach. Really depends on what you're gonna, how you run your business and how you want to be paid. But there are always different options, how you should price and what you should price. It's not
mm.
just one line item, just Webflow development. You can always break it down, and whether it's coming under as a bundle or individual task is up to you as a business.
Yeah, and I think when you're a beginner, like we said, you will not know that a project includes all of these line items.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why when you get to intermediate, you can start breaking it down, and then you'll realize, oh, like I'm not charging enough, and then you can bump up
yeah,
your prices, and then that's
yeah,
when you're intermediate. But then I think, just to swiftly move on, um there's always a big thing in sales, like something called upsells, right, where you can sell other stuff to the client that they it's not necessary, but is like a power up technically.
yeah,
So you can, for example, what I like to do is charge for like monthly maintenance or SEO. So like, I can set up their Google My Business, their Google Analytics, all of that stuff, and I can upsell that to the client. Even if the client
yeah,
didn't request it, I can tell them, you know what, this is going to be good for you, and you can upsell. You can charge maybe like a couple hundred to 1,000.
yeah,
And there's, as you grow, as you move from beginner, intermediate to expert, you sort of think of more things that you can upsell. So yeah.
yeah. I think this is almost the territory of how to increase your prices. But one
Mm.
way to increase your prices is to add more things to it.
Yeah.
It's classic shopping cart thing, right? Like if you have more items in
Mm.
your shopping cart, it's going to cost more. But if it all works together, if it all makes sense, you can. That's how you go from selling $2,000, $3,000 websites to 10K, 20K. It's just how much line items you can put and how much value you can add to each item. And upselling is one great way to do that.
Mm.
Doesn't mean, if let's say you're only a development agency or only a development freelancer, you can upsell someone else in your thing. You can say, oh, I know somebody who designs really well. This is his portfolio, and you can charge a small markup, right? If your friend or somebody you're working with that you're collaborating with charges 2K, you can add 3K and you can take the 1K just because maybe you're the middle person, you're communicating between the client and your collaborator. So these are again different ways to sort of upsell and increase your total overall bill to the client
Mm-hmm.
without making it look like it's coming out nowhere.
Yeah, and I think those are like great upsells for the client, but you can also like upsell to other freelancers as well. For example,
Yeah.
I was watching this 5 Digital video yesterday, and I think it was like the video was something like 5 ways to add value to your service-based business. And he
Mm.
mentioned that, we mentioned that once you get to the intermediate stage, you start building processes and all of that stuff. And you can, you know, package up those processes and sell it as a course or like sell it as a, free template or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is another source of income that you can think of. I think that's like more of a, you should start thinking of that when you're like moving on from intermediate to expert, because you you do not want to focus on stuff that is not making you money. All of your sources of income, they have to make you money firstly, and they also have to integrate with one another. So one
Yeah.
source of income helps another. So for example, if you sell courses, that not only makes you money, but it also increases your trust and authority in the industry to help you sell more client projects to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's just like another avenue of upsells that you can do.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, man. Just to conclude, do you have any like final words or?
I think to be fair, this is probably the most useful thing that we talked about in quite a
Yeah.
while. But it really takes time to sort of figure out pricing, and it sort of ties in with experience more than anything else. The
Mm-hmm.
longer you are in the industry, the longer you're working, the more you know how much others are charging, the more you know your worth, the more you know how much value you're bringing. As a
Mm-hmm.
beginner, there's no way you're gonna know this. You can watch 100 videos, you can listen to 1,000 people talk about it. It means nothing because you have no tangible, feeling or tangible experience to relate it to. I would
Yeah.
say as a conclusion is, if you're a beginner, figure it out. Right? It's not
Mm.
about the money initially. It's like playing a game. You got a game where the rules is set by you and you have to figure out what the rules are, is what
Mm.
business is. And if you're an intermediate, you sort of gone through the first phase of growth, and going to the expert level is literally how much you're willing to be uncomfortable. Being an
Mm.
intermediate, it's very difficult because you're probably earning enough, but you gotta and it's very easy to sort of get caught in that loop of like, oh, I'll just stay in this pricing because a lot of demand is sort of coming in, and I'm sort of
Mm.
growing. I'll just stay here. But if you really want to go to the expert level, you gotta say no to a lot, which I think I'm sort of still learning. Is like by
Mm-hmm.
saying no, you open up yourself for more opportunities so that you can then focus on getting to the expert range.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think for me, like the final words is, I
Yeah, so
think the
tired.
main thing to do is, yeah, I'm tired, but I think the main thing to do is just start. Like, or if
Yeah,
if a beginner's watching this and they don't know how to price, bro, just start and then you'll figure it out as
yeah,
go along. And I think that's the
yeah,
best way to learn. Again, like you said, Vim, you can watch as many videos as you want, but you'll never really know exactly what to do. The main,
yeah.
you kind of watch videos and like get advice to like steer you in the right direction.
But
But
it
in
makes
terms of
no
like
sense because I
yeah,
remember
but it
watching.
doesn't make sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
because you don't know if that direction is right for you or not. You get
yeah,
me?
and
So
most of the time it sounds like
yeah.
he's just talking shit, but you're not
Mm,
at that level to understand, and those videos aren't made for you. Most of these
yeah.
videos about pricing and money is not directed at beginners, because the only
Mm-hmm.
thing as a beginner you should worry about is growth and just being
Yeah.
sustainable in some way.
Yeah. Like we've been beginners for a long time. Like
Yeah,
us two are probably like the perfect example of starting from scratch because we literally
yeah,
did. You know, we're both like ridiculously young.
yeah.
We had zero experience.
Ridiculously, maybe not, but yeah.
Oh, okay, I probably was ridiculously young. Zero
Zero
experience
experience, zero
in
funding,
Webflow, in websites, in anything,
in just
in
anything, like
selling.
in
Yeah,
selling in
like
jobs,
job,
whatever.
nothing,
It's
bro. So
literally
it's
like
like,
our first job.
so yeah, we're literally the definition of like starting from scratch. So we're
Yeah,
telling, and we learned everything. I mean, I learned everything just from my own experience and stuff.
just
Of course,
doing.
like videos and stuff like that helped me a
Mm,
little bit for to steer me in the right direction. But
yeah,
I had to learn everything from scratch. And the best advice I can give any beginners is just to start and do the same.
yeah,
You'll learn it. You know, we can tell you do this, do this, do that, but you'll never know that's true unless you try it out yourself.
yeah,
So again, just the best thing to do is just start.
yeah. Cool.
Cool, man. All right, guys. That was it. You know, we hope you guys enjoyed that. I did enjoy this one. You know, especially as a beginner, it's quite hard to, know what to price a
We
project
should
and
do
stuff like
one
that. So
topic on what we have learned,
yeah,
about the
what we
things
learn
that
as
we have learned
beginners.
as beginners. Yeah,
Yeah, if you
I
guys
think.
want that video to come out, make sure you drop a comment. If you did
Yeah,
enjoy this one, make sure you leave a like and hit the subscribe button and make sure you turn on the bell notification
we have
button.
crossed 200, by the
So
way.
yeah,
It's
we crossed
201
200. Yeah,
actually.
we crossed
205 or
200.
something like that.
I think it's like we're like 206 or 7.
Oh shit, nice.
But yeah, guys, if you did enjoy the video, make sure you leave a like. Let's try to hit, let's try
300.
to hit 10 likes. 10 likes in this video. Come on,
10
guys.
likes and
And
300 subs.
yeah, this is like the first, like, I think like goal I set ever. So
Yeah,
yeah, guys, make sure you leave
10.
a like and let's try to hit 10 likes. And make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you don't miss out on future videos. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.